Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez, and I'm happy to report that right now you can order my book. That's right, I wrote a book. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. If you want other options on how you can buy my book, please sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. You could also join my community at thelouperez.locals.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Whether you're a long-time listener or a first-time, 5-star reviews are lovely. If you're looking for other ways you can support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. If you're into CBD products, please check out PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Use promo code LOU to get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you like cold brew, check out Black Organic Cold Brew at www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code LOU for free shipping. All right, let's go. Very happy to be joined by my next guest. You may know her as Exulansic. And if you follow her, or if you don't follow her, you can follow her on Exulansic.com, EXULANSIC.com. And before we started this, I already, I warned her that I was probably going to mispronounce the word, the name. So I'm going to refer to her as X from now on. So X, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah. So I guess the first question I have is, what does Exulansic mean? Like, where did that come from? Is that a real name, or
So it's not my given name, but it's a word I gave myself. It comes from John Koenig, Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. So there's one of the words is exulansis, which refers to the feeling of a life experience that was very significant, being so disconnected from the rest of your life story that you stop trying to talk about it. You stop trying to share it because other people can't relate to it. Wow. So I took that word and I made an adjective.
Wow. And was there something in your own life that, that you have your own, sort of moment that?
Oh, I've had a lot of those. I've had kind of a strange life. I guess it,
yeah. Well, I mean, the way that I that I found you, and subsequently, I've enjoyed the work that you've done on Odyssey. I watch your videos there, and then also on you've delved into TikTok. I'm there too. I'm 40 years old, and I'm on TikTok, but I'm a comedian, so I guess it's kind of lame that I'm on TikTok, but
no, it's great. TikTok's the future.
It is the future.
The future is very specific and controlled by China.
Yeah, and very short.
The wrong opinions, you're out of the future. Sorry.
Exactly. So I came upon you on trigonometry, and I'm friends with Constantine and Francis, and I was a guest on their podcast years ago, and then they came and were on my podcast, and the subject matter that you guys were talking about were the trans issues, and I'm up on my trans issues, I guess, as any cis hetero male can be, and I have to say that the episode that you were on, you were saying a lot of things that I had never heard before, that give me a lot of it was a perspective that I think more people should know about, and I think I may have set myself up too for maybe my first video being removed from YouTube. Because apparently I think you have that magic about you that your stuff gets taken down. But maybe we could just talk about.
You actually had a video taken down?
No, this might be the first one.
This might be the first one.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. So far, the trigonometry one is still up. I was worried that would get taken down just because of me, because they've said that if you're a band creator, you might lose your channel for hosting band creators. But I have a feeling that that's more if they think that the band creator is controlling the channel. I don't know if they're going that far as to actually prohibit other people from talking to the wrong people about neutral stuff that's not against TOS.
Or I'll just edit this so it's like the truth about Exulansic and why she's evil.
Oh, there's a few of those videos up already.
I bet. So yeah, where does So where does your story start? Where does it start? Like, oh my God, it's going to be a very long episode. But you have firsthand experience with, you know, being transgender, at least for a short period of time. I'll let you take it, you know, take it from there.
Sure. So yeah, my story is basically, you know, I had a feelings of alienation that were somewhat preoccupied with my sex and the expectations placed on me from early childhood. But it wasn't really till I got to college, and this was around 2005, that I was kind of first exposed to it as being something that people my age were starting to get into. And so it wasn't quite at the beginning of college. I'd say it started becoming more and more of a thing in my life. Around 2009 is when I started identifying with that label and having mostly friends who were identifying with that label of trans or transgender, genderqueer, you know, whatever is in the grab bag these days, of labels. And that lasted until, say, about 2013 is when I stopped having a huge investment in that label and feeling like I needed to present in a certain way. And then just kind of gradually, I was in therapy on my own and not with a gender therapist. I also was seeing my peers who were not in real therapy, one of whom was specifically with a gender therapist, probably more of them, but she's the one I know about in particular. And seeing what it actually looked like to be going through these procedures and what it was doing to them, and the effect it had on them mentally and physically. And it was just, and meanwhile, pronouns were starting to take off as we're coming into like 2014, 2015 was the first time I'd ever really encountered this idea that we should all say our pronouns and we should all have pronouns, and that was a significant thing. Cause like when I was in it, it was very much like, you know, this has to be our secret, or because it's so dangerous. But it just, as it became more and more of a popular fad, it was less and less something that you had to keep a secret. And at the same time, it was coming kind of top down from my first encounter with pronouns was with the LGBT center at the school I was at. And one of their events had us all go around a big circle and introduce. And that's when I first learned the theory behind it, which is that if everybody says their pronouns, then the people who have unusual pronouns won't stand out, which is silly. It's clearly silly.
Well, the pronoun stuff, it's interesting. A few years back, I wrote a sketch that produced a sketch comedy video called ESL Students Learn New Gender Pronouns. So just imagine, you know, non-native English speakers learning English for the first time and being sort of confronted with 90 different, you know, neo-pronouns, and like having to try to figure out how to conjugate it. And sort of the root of that came from my dad is a foreigner. English is not his first language. And I just sort of imagined like my dad coming, you know, kind of, you know, fresh over the border and then learning English and like having, you know, having to deal with this stuff. And the pronoun thing, it's almost, I mean, I know it's symbolic in the way that language is symbolic, but it's like you only use pronouns when you're talking about somebody, like in, you know, when you're talking about someone, right? So it's sort of like insisting on a pronoun is insisting on having other people see you a certain way when you're not even there, you know? And it's sort of like that the other people need to buy in to whatever you're sort of you're putting out there.
Kind of legitimizes eavesdropping too. It's just like they can come over. Excuse me, I heard the wrong pronoun. Were you talking about me? I need to clear this up right now. Yeah. And but with the English as a second language is a huge thing. Before I became a speech therapist, I was getting my degree in linguistics, studying various languages. I studied abroad in Japan and then also in Turkey, and yeah, they both have problems with pronouns, both with the actual pronunciation of them and then the use of them. Turks especially, because they only have the one pronoun for everything: he, she, it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, yeah, they just say "oh." So they don't have the, English does have gender in our pronouns, but the gender is not what people expect. The gender is animate versus inanimate. And so animate gender is he and she, and inanimate is it. So that's the actual gender split in English. He and she is not a gender split in English because we're referring to males and females with he and she. We're not referring to objects that are arbitrarily gendered masculine, feminine. So we don't have that kind of gender in English the way that you do in Spanish.
Right.
Which is one of the ways that this is taken off is people don't understand that he and she, it's not a gender. It's a semantic division based on sex, and sex isn't gender.
Wow. So with your history in linguistics, I mean, so much of it seems like what people are fighting over comes down to language and kind of this idea that language will somehow reshape the world in a way, like you can kind of alter reality if you use the right, in a way. Like
you can be a witch. You can cast
exactly. Spells. Yeah, the right incantation.
It's absurd.
Right.
Yeah, we can't actually change reality by changing how you talk about it, and so the idea that you can cause a cultural shift in social attitudes by changing how you talk is superstitious, in my opinion, and it's not based in anything. It's very, very fundamentalist mindset, very much praise be, go and grace, or whatever they said in The Handmaid's Tale. This idea that if we all just said the right phrases all the time, we wouldn't have any sort of social problems. And obviously, these policies cause a lot of social problems. They immediately marginalize people who speak English as a second language, for instance. We fought really hard to protect people on the basis of national origin and civil rights legislation. And now we're throwing that out.
Mm-hmm. And with there's like a video I watched of yours, I think it was on TikTok, where it has something to do where you kind of go biblical and you go back to Adam, and Adam, sort of being given the task, I guess, from Yahweh or God to
he names
to name things, and then somehow can you talk about that? I'm sorry, I'm like, if for those of you who are listening or watching, if this is like too inside baseball, it's because I kind of went down a little rabbit hole and watched a lot of her stuff. So
sure, no worries. And so I'm not saying that this story actually happened or be Christian or anything like that. But as somebody that was taught that when I was younger and has had time to reflect on it, I believe that the purpose of that story is to, among other things, is to teach the concept that humans are not creators, that naming is not creating, that these are different actions, and that humans don't have we can only do the naming part. We can't actually create, but we need to understand that there's a distinction between, in linguistics, semiotics, it's called the signified and the signifier. And so the idea is that what is signified is not the same as the signifier. The label is not the object that's labeled. And that's a fundamental confusion that is really important to separate. That it doesn't matter how I refer to you. I can't change what you are.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's probably a good segue into kind of this whole issue, because I remember back when I was in college, I graduated college 2004, so I guess a year before you started. And I took a sex and gender studies class. It met one of the requirements. Like I think it was like a social science. Like you could take either a real science class or you could take a social science class. And I saw one titled Sex and Gender, and I was like, this is going to be awesome. And it was not awesome. But I remember that was the first time I had a classmate we were going around the room, and I think the first day you do like icebreakers, and the professor called out their name, and then asked everybody, is there a name you'd prefer? And I thought this person said Greg, and I was like, oh, okay, that dude is Greg. And it turns out over the course of the semester, their name was they preferred Gray, like either Gray or Grey, and they were I guess non-binary, and their name reflected that. And the closer you look, you're like, oh, this is probably a biological female who short hair, wore baggy clothes. Maybe I forget if Gray binded their breasts. I don't remember, that much into it. But it was like at that point, it was sort of like the name that they chose for themselves was a sort of a symbol of what they were, at least their lifestyle, I guess, or that.
Mm-hmm. So they, yeah. So I remember. So at Berkeley is where Judith Butler teaches,
Okay.
and her big claim to fame is this insight that she had. Insight is glorifying it, but this idea that you can't oppress somebody you can't see is how I would summarize Judith Butler's like entire position. So that's the concept of queering. If you're going to queer the culture and you're gonna queer this or that, it's about making it so that the oppressor can't tell which group you're in, and therefore they cannot oppress you because they can't tell which one you are. So the idea is that if we all queer ourselves up, then we'll get rid of homophobia, we'll get rid of sexism. It'll all just mystically go away because a miracle will happen in between point A and point B, and the oppressors will just go, we don't know who to oppress now. I guess we can't oppress anyone. And so that's their logic for why we don't need civil rights protections on the basis of, the actual established categories anymore. Once we queer everything, it won't be an issue because there won't be any way to know who the native English speakers are and who the females are. It'll be a mystery.
Well, that's so odd because, most of the time you can, if somebody is, I guess, queering themselves, you can kind of tell like what they have happening under the hood. You can kind of tell like, which people, and I'm trying to be like, I don't know, I'm trying to be kind or nice about it. Like you can kind of tell like, okay, you're a biological male who's, trying to look more female. You're a female who's trying to look like more like a male. I guess that's where you sort of kind of run up against physical reality there in biology that you really can't. There's only so much you could do with that. Right.
Yeah, and so then you get into the other piece of it that I talk about it, that is that a lot of these people are either on the autism spectrum or have some other developmental difference, which is part of why their symptoms start in early childhood for some of them, and otherwise why they have a really hard time taking the perspective on other people and understanding why their demands are unreasonable and why we can still tell. We can in fact still tell. But they really don't know how to take a realistic outsider perspective on themselves. It's called, in my field, we call it a perspective taking deficit or a social pragmatic deficit. And that's like one half of autism is the social pragmatic deficit, the other half being the sensory delay. And then the sensory delay explains why parts of their body that are naturally more sensitive than other parts of their body keep distracting them and they keep obsessing about it. Those parts would be the sexual parts.
So is this kind of like your own sort of like theory about what's happening with transgender people, or is this? Yeah,
that's probably my synthetic theory. Although I'm not the first person or the only person to make the observation that it seems to be a high rate of autism among people who are referred to these gender clinics. It seems out of proportion, and it's also drawing on my own firsthand experience, and realizing that the one thing I found, and I was identified very, very young in my life as somebody who had both those issues. A lot of people think that I'm autistic. I'm not autistic. I describe it as living just outside of Boston. If autism is Boston, I'm just outside of Boston. I have a different condition that looks very similar. It's a very similar part of the country as Boston. It's not Boston. It's different. Mm-hmm. But point is, I was typically grouped with autistic kids too during therapy, so it was interesting. Mm-hmm. But I can look back and see that was a big part of it for me was that I didn't understand how conversation worked, how conversations evolved. I didn't understand how groups of people decided what to do. I just didn't understand things, and I couldn't predict things very well. And at the same time, there was a bit of a processing delay. So when the group decided to go do something, I was always the last to know. And so it's just that's changed as I've gotten older and I've developed. But in the past it was a more significant factor explaining why this made sense. Like, oh, it's gender. It's because some people act this way, some people act this way, and the reason that I have social problems is that I act this way because I'm this sex, but really I'm supposed to naturally somehow be acting this other way. And if I just switched, everything will work out. Overlooking the fact that the other change that happened was that I went from feeling out of control to feeling in control, and that alone is going to help. Time passed. That's going to help. There's all these other things that are confounding in the experiment. That these people who are taking control in this manner and feeling like this is the answer because I feel better now that I did something. They're overlooking placebo effect, for instance. It's just they're missing out on other explanations, while at the same time the fact that it helps slightly, that's proof. That's evidence that they should go cut body parts off.
Yeah, could we talk about? Well, for one, I find it interesting. I wonder if is one of the reasons why you got into linguistics as a way to sort of figure out, the relationship between language and socialization.
Yeah,
and all.
Yeah, I think so. Is because I've always had been prodigious in terms of my language ability. So it's always really confused me why I didn't understand how like other people just seem to be better at certain things, language wise. Like I could read aloud with clear diction when I was 2. My mom has videos.
Oh wow!
So it's I was speaking in long, like compound, complex sentences, just really early.
We're love. My son is my oldest is like 2 and 2 months old, so 26 months, and we're going to put together a dictionary of his words, because like for dinosaur it's dosh, which is really cute. Choo-choo, he loves choo-choo, so he loves doshes and choo-choos. So throughout the day is basically filled with dinosaurs and choo-choo trains. And depending on like how he says it, sometimes you could kind of understand what he means exactly, like which dosh he's talking about. It's really
so he's like generalizing.
Yeah, and
he's got one word he can say, and so that means everything.
Yeah. So and ata is airplane, which is it's really cute. It's very cute. He's not putting together all these sentences like you were, but
yeah, that's much more typical to not do. Kids at 2 are supposed to be putting 2 words together, maybe 3 sometimes on a good day.
Right.
Whereas I was saying things like, if I clean my room, can we go to the park later? Like really long, complex sentences. I was also using sarcasm and understanding it too.
That's freaky. That's
arguing.
Seeing
my comprehension was also really high. It's not typical. And then I had the social pragmatic thing was just its own thing. But that was why assessors didn't think I was autistic, or one of the main reasons is that I never had any trouble with non-literal language. I always and theory of mind. I could understand why somebody said something that didn't make sense. I could figure that out, but I couldn't figure out why they like kind of like what. Or here's another example: ordering in a restaurant would always just be like, this is really terrifying.
Oh, really?
So just this like functional thing. I had a lot of anxiety too, which is probably part of it.
I feel like there's a like an animated show in there, just like this, it's a super precocious 2-year-old who is really developed on this stuff, but just can't order
like
at a restaurant.
Rugrats, like what's the Baby Sheldon or something or Little Sheldon?
I know Rugrats. I don't know the.
There's Sheldon is from The Big Bang Theory, but I think they made another spin-off that stars a kid that's supposed to be him as a child. But it would be like that version, but with me as a toddler.
As a toddler, like you're still pooping yourself, but other than that,
I never do that. I'm a girl. Girls don't.
Other than that, she has it all under control. But I mean, having that kind of mind, I mean, it's damn near impossible not to call out bullshit when you see it. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. I was never that developed at that young of an age, but like there are instances where I've embarrassed my wife out in public because we'll be at a restaurant and I'm not enjoying the meal and the waiter makes the mistake of asking how the meal is, and I have to like let him know that this is terrible. It's very upsetting to me, and I'm not asking for the meal, for the dish to be taken off the check. I just want you to know that what's going on. It's almost like, well, they asked me, so then I have to let them know. And that could be dealing with those kinds of people. It's especially with like a subject like this, like the transgender stuff. And based on your own experience with it, it must be very difficult to hold your tongue and to hold back.
Yeah, it's always been been hard to not respond and to have an understanding that some people had like power over me and like had control over consequences. I had no conception of that really. I also had a really weird idea for a while that conversation, like I didn't understand that conversations began and then you had them and then they ended. In my mind, like the conversation I'm having with you, this is going to be the beginning of all future conversations, and they all have to relate back in some way, and you're going to remember, and so I need to remember exactly what was said. It was not so. Result: just avoid talking.
Right. With and with the trend stuff, as far as people taking control of their lives, maybe we could talk about some of the medical procedures, both chemical, medicinal, and surgical that goes into it, and talk about those. So, what are some of the things that people who are transitioning go through?
I read somebody sent me a PubMed article where it was a look at 129 people who had undergone some form of, they called it reconstruction, but I feel like if it's the reconstruction is following genital destruction, it should be called a genital destruction. And it's nice that you tried to fix it, kind of. But we're talking phalloplasty and metoidioplasty, and what is that? So phalloplasty would be creating of a penis, or yeah. So the phalloplasty is like the full size one, and then metoidioplasty is like micro. So you end up with like an inch maybe or 2 inches. And then the phalloplasty one, you might end up with like 6 inches. So
what do they? So what is the phallo? Well, what is the big one made out of? I gotta go there. I gotta find out.
Just whatever's handy. Like literally, they take arm skin, so it's whatever's handy. Or they take back skin, or they take stomach skin. Sometimes I have a Snuffleupagus episode where it's like literally just this tentacle that's coming out her stomach, like halfway between her belly button and the top of the pubic hair. You can see the photo is just this like tentacle arm thing. So it's called Snuffleupagus, is that episode. And then I've since been told that she's also appears in another episode of mine called Folie à Deux. And my titles are all typically urinary puns when I'm talking about phalloplasties. So there's something called a Foley catheter. And she had 2 catheters.
2 catheters.
So she had a Foley catheter and then a suprapubic catheter. So she had there are 2 of them. So Folie à Deux, and Folie à Deux is also a mental illness where it's a craziness of 2. So people get in the same delusion.
So this is a biological woman who gets a penis, or somehow they
actually took like part of her stomach and then pulled it off. So now she's got this like literally looks like a little tentacle. And it looks like a Snuffleupagus, like Horton Hears a Who on her stomach. Wow. It's nightmarish. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen.
I don't have the stomach to look at stuff like that. Like the thought of
that's what I use instead of coffee.
That gets you up in the morning?
Just wake up in the morning. I'm camo awake.
I don't do very well with with scars, with seeing wounds, or even the idea of surgery. Like my mother years back had diverticulitis, and she had to get like a bag, a colostomy bag. And fortunately, they were able to reverse it. But like there was a moment when she showed me like the scar. When I think about it, I kind of get chills. But it was fairly recently. There was a cover of a magazine where it was a trans man who I think they had a piece of muscle out of their leg removed to be fashioned into a penis, right? Something like that. That's about
right. Yeah, they'll take chunks of your leg. They'll take chunks of your cheek sometimes.
Of your cheek?
Yeah. So I have an episode called Cheek Your Privilege, where I follow the nightmare of this one person. I've probably done the most phalloplasty episodes on her case, because it's so tragic. She had a arm skin phalloplasty, immediately got diverticulitis in it, and became septic from that, in the ICU, multiple blood clots, bladder stones, needing to have the cheek taken out to fashion into a new urethra to like cover up the old urethra that was made out of arm skin that didn't work, obviously. Why would it have worked? And it's been one thing after another. And I think her total racks up at like closing in, if she's not at $1 million, she's definitely near $1 million, based on her totals that she's shared.
Does it look like, because it sounds monstrous to me, the way that you're describing it, like, does it look, you described it as one of them as snuffleupagus. I mean, does it look like a penis?
No. I would not say it. I would not go that far. No, it looks like, I mean, maybe a penis that was deflated, like a penis that was also a hot air balloon that had been deflated for the day and was getting ready to be rolled up. Like it's monstrous. In this person's case, also, she had a bunch of tattoos on the arm that became
part of
the phallus. And the thing with arm skin is that, it's stretched over a frame. Mm-hmm. And that's what allows it to not shrink up over time. And so once you take it off the frame and you sew it up into a tube, apparently that's something that happens based on her Reddit photos, is that it'll just start shrinking up. So she started at 6 inches and then it was 3 inches, and then she made her Reddit private because she found the videos and didn't like that.
Oh God. Well, it's
in her case, she was also medicalized as a minor. So I laugh, but it's actually quite horrifying when you understand that she was medicalized as a minor. At least at 17 at testosterone. I suspect based on her face that she was actually put on puberty blockers too, but she's never said that in the videos I've seen.
Wow. Well, I oftentimes, you'll hear about, people who've transitioned and, are living, happy lives. But, obviously if you're dealing with, where we are right now with, with medicine, with, I guess, I don't know what you call it, plastic surgery or whatever. And I mean,
life-saving trans healthcare. It saves lives.
But the amount of risk going into that, like, I mean, that is so huge. And you said this person, like or at least you believe that they started very young with this stuff.
She has said that she was put on testosterone at 17. And that she had to wait till she was 18 to get her mastectomy because they didn't cover mastectomies for under 18. So if it's so urgently life-saving, why didn't the insurance want to pay? That's the question. Sounds like everybody knew that this wasn't a life-saving, medically necessary mastectomy. So I think she said, actually, no, I take that back. I think she said she paid out of pocket because they wouldn't cover it. I'll have to go back and look at the video, but I'm working on a larger data reduction right now project, actually, so that I can take the documentaries I've made and compress them down into a book so that you can easily just flip through it and see all the stats without having to watch it. But yeah, no, in her case, she came very close to death. Still might end up. I don't know how things are going to work out with her. I've also covered people who, as a result of the one I'm thinking of, it was a facial feminization surgery. He had a stroke and ended up losing the use of his arm.
From the surgery, or was it directly linked to the surgery?
Yeah, so they went in and they're cutting your jaw for a facial feminization surgery. They're like shaving it down, and they're also cutting chunks out so that they can move this part like down so it can be pointy and stuff. And so you have a significant artery called your carotid artery that runs right up here and goes, here, and also goes up to feed your brain after it splits, and it splits right here. And so they had a bleed, a carotid artery bleed in that place, and as a result, have a lot of nerve damage, of course, to the face. But it also caused a stroke in the right frontal lobe, which is like one of the worst places you can have a stroke. If you're going to have a stroke anywhere, that's not a good place to have it. It's really hard to treat right hemisphere problems, and the frontal lobe is the seat of judgment. So it's just like very unfortunate. But yeah, no, it was directly from the surgery, and they noticed the limp arm in the recovery suite. And per this person's story, the people treating him then told him that he needed to relax because he looked like he was having a stroke. And so if he kept being upset, they would have to send him to the ICU. So they kind of just like threatened him. And since, he was out of his mind on drugs and having a stroke, he wasn't able to fight for him. So then he ended up like going home the next day. Like he still didn't go to the ER. And once he was at home, I guess his partner was like, yo, your arm's not working.
Oh,
or something. Shit. Or it might have even been that he was spitting the blood into a bucket and that it was either the partner or the paramedics noticed that the arm wasn't working, and then finally he got medical attention. And I was reviewing his story about 7 months after it had happened. Was his last post about it, and his arm's still not working.
And how do you have you spoken to any of these people, or do they
some of them
how do their stories get out there?
One person I interviewed with is my interview with Brian James. Had got a phalloplasty, so female to male, and as a result of that, and they do a vaginectomy a lot of the time for the phalloplasty. So I've heard some of them refer to it as jack-o'-lanterning.
Jack-o'-lantern.
Because to make a jack-o'-lantern, you have to reach into the pumpkin and pull it out.
Wait, so they pull out like the what are they pulling out? Everything everything inside becomes the penis. Then is that how
they'll use some of the tissue? Yeah, that's how they justify it. They claim that they have to scoop out the vagina in order to fashion it into a urethra for the new phallus. And so during that process, they messed it up so badly that Ryan was left needing a colostomy bag to avoid constant infections. Although constant infections still happened. Last I heard, Ryan is still on the colostomy bag. They have said that the fistula has magically healed, but they haven't actually tried to reconnect anything. So I'm a little skeptical that it'll still be as healed once it's reconnected and under normal forces. I think we may discover that it has not fully healed after all. But so there was just one giant fistula. So it was actually two fistulas because it was connecting the rectum to what had previously been the vagina.
And the fistula is a fistula just like kind of one orifice? Is that what that means?
Yeah, fistula is a healed opening between two bodily cavities or between a bodily cavity and outside. This should not be there.
Oh man.
So when they give somebody a stoma for a colostomy bag, they are making a fistula on purpose, medically. But here they did not mean to make a fistula, and so it caused a lot of problems.
Oh man, this is the most graphic episode of the Lou Perez podcast I have ever been party to, and I have to be party to it. I'm listening to this, but you bring up this stuff, and for one, I've never heard anything like this, and it's like the amount of risk, making this life-altering, decision. You could never, go back for that. Is one type of sex change more dangerous than the other? Like, say, for example, women, female to male, is that more dangerous than male to female, or do you have like those numbers?
I don't think either of them. I mean, they're both, especially if you're actually doing the genital reconstructions, they're both pretty horrendously dangerous. These are very delicate areas that are very functional. They're constantly stretching and different forces are being applied. When you're at different levels of consciousness, like, you getting up to wander to the bathroom in the middle of the night, half asleep, you might use a lot more force, because you're in a hurry, than you would if you were like super awake and focused and very delicately trying to prove to the doctor that your fistula's gone. So we have to think about, I as a speech therapist, I do swallow, and people really underestimate how critically important that function is and how often you swallow, which is like 500 to 700 times a day.
500 to 700 times a day.
Don't pee that often, but you definitely still are using it regularly. Yeah, about once a minute when you're awake.
Wow. Now that's going to be on my mind. Now I'm like, am I swallowing enough? Lou, are you swallowing enough throughout the day?
Well, if you don't swallow enough, you drool, so you'll notice. Although I guess that's what the beard's for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is just a drool catcher.
Drool catcher, fidgets. Maybe I should go on tea after all.
Yeah. well, but maybe we talk about, let's talk about testosterone. So when you were, going through your stage in life, were you ever on testosterone or?
No, thank goodness. Mm-hmm. I had a reasonable medical background even then. So I was less naive about the nightmare that awaits when you go to the hospital too many times. And so I was able to really think about like these drugs, their side effects. Do I want to actually go forward with this? And I had the benefit of a therapist that was not invested in having me go down this path. She wasn't a gender therapist or anything like that. And so she just helped me kind of think about pros and cons. And I realized, like, you know, this is a serious drug. This is an anabolic steroid. I've heard that those are harmful to people that take them for cosmetic reasons. And this is a solidly cosmetic reason at a cosmetic dose.
So what does testosterone do? And for all my listeners, they know that I'm like totally just like testied up, you know, like I got, you know, my T is through the roof, bro. But other than growing a beard, what are some side effects of testosterone, you know, and why do people who are transitioning, you know, take it?
So testosterone is a anabolic steroid. Females do have it, but we have a very low amount compared to males. And the effects of testosterone are the secondary sex characteristics that you see develop at puberty, including facial hair growth and bodily hair growth. It deepens your voice. They say it's doing a lot more than just deepening it. But that is in how it's billed to people. One thing that I think that a lot of families are not really being told about, based on the videos I've seen of people talking about their experiences with T, is that one of the immediate changes, the immediate irreversible changes that happens, is that it causes an enlargement of female genitalia, permanent deformation of female genitalia. And one of the definitions of mutilation is to do something to something that results in it being deformed. And so my position is that when you give testosterone to a minor teenage girl, you are mutilating her female genitals permanently. It doesn't go back. It's called bottom growth, they call it. And I've had some people say, well, you should, and it happens like, when I say immediately, I mean like a week, like one dose, it'll happen.
Really?
And it just causes this dramatic enlargement. Yeah. Permanent dramatic enlargement. It's changing something about the connective tissue.
How much larger does it?
I think 1 to 2 inches, I've heard. Up to 1 to 2 inches.
Wow.
Yeah. So it becomes, and then so that's what they do in the metoidioplasty is they go in, they call it a clitoral release. So you have this enlarged
a clitoral release. Did you say Luis? L-U-I-S? Oh, really?
Release.
Okay. Because my
releasing it.
My full name is Luis. I thought it was clitoral Luis. That my nickname in high school. But please go on. Please go on.
Must be a story there. They'll when this happens, it's very painful, and they'll tell you that. They'll straight up. They'll talk about it as being either very uncomfortable but not painful, just really really distracting and constantly, and they don't like how it feels and this or that. And then other ones would be like, yeah, no, it's just straight up painful. It's just straight up painful. So I have videos of them that I found getting real about that, and so. And the reason it's painful is that you have this structure that's enlarging, but the connective tissue that's keeping it down is not enlarging because they're adults. They've already grown. So some things have already grown. When development's supposed to happen in tandem, and this is out of tandem, and so they will go in and cut the ligaments that are holding it down, and that allows it to then expand outward more. So they kind of like excavate. And then some people then will also have them go and using the other available tissue that they've jack-o'-lanterned out, and will fashion a micro penis via metoidioplasty, where they end up like an inch little long thing that they can use to stand to pee. It's very critically important that they be standing and peeing at the same time, and they're not able to do that without these extensive surgeries. So being standing to pee is like a traditional guy thing. Therefore, they want to be able to have that. As one of the trans rights, RITES. It's as
I've gotten older, I find sometimes it just feels better to just sit down. Like there's no, I had a joke where
you're trans.
Might be.
Have you considered becoming an innie?
I have. Oh, no,
totally reversible. Very easily reversed. You just plug your nose and it pops right back out.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because like these are all, irreversible. It's sort of, once you go, once this is done, it's, you're kind of, stuck with that. And I mean, I'm imagining like, the people, obviously a lot of people, God, they're obviously serious about what they're doing if they're making, this decision in life. And, I would hope that the decision they make would be, whichever doctor they have working on them is knows what they're doing, and, will make it so that they're, comfortable and all that. But fuck, the way that you describe some of these cases, I mean, it just seems it's like such an unfortunate life, burden to be living with after that.
Yeah, and it doesn't go away, and you get older, and your tissue also changes. It becomes less springy. It becomes less well secured. It becomes floppier. So it's like all of these. And scar tissue is not going to age the same way as your other tissue. So it's just going to create new problems as you get older. One of the another person that I did a response to for the vaginoplasty volumes, as the series is called. He has recently announced his detransition. This individual got their vaginoplasty, and then I think that the first one didn't work right, and so then got a colon vaginoplasty. So sometimes if the inverted penis doesn't take the first time, I call it sometimes a Russian nesting dick, because that's the idea, right? They're inverting it and then.
One within is like one within another dick. Is that, or is that the Russian doll?
When they go home with their partner, it'll be a Russian nesting dick.
Ah, got it.
So that when that fails, sometimes they'll go in and they'll actually take a piece of colon, like they'll take 6 inches of colon, and that'll be the new vagina.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so this person's video, like talking about how they'll sell it by saying, well, it lubricates on its own just like a real vagina, but what they don't tell you is that it lubricates in response to food, like a real colon.
So you're dealing with feces
well, by the time it's in the colon vaginoplasty, there's no feces coming through it.
Right.
It's cut, and then your colon has been recombined, and then they've just taken this extra piece. They sew up one end. And then they just kind of like tuck it in there. And then then you have to hold it open with the dilator like every day or multiple times a day, depending. And so this individual had a fistula in that, and found out because he farted into it. So. And
what happened? Like, was that a disaster?
It came out. It comes out the wrong hole.
Oh my God. Holy shit. Wait, nightmare. Who the fuck is the surgeon like doing this? Or is this?
In that case, I think it was, he had said it was Dr. Salgado in Miami, or at least the comments strongly implied it was that individual. Don't quote me on that though. I'm just reporting secondhand what I saw in that comment section.
Uh-huh. Oh, man.
But there's also people at Boston Children's Hospital that are doing this. I did the series on a response to a panel discussion at Boston Children's Hospital, and the series is called Boston Children's Hell. And it's 5 people who may have been on the treatment team for the person that I told you about, who had the vaginectomy related fistula and the colostomy bag, and you can just see how they're enjoying their religious ecstasy, and they're completely detached from the reality of what they're doing, and they're profoundly excited that they get to mess with the developing sexualities of children, and no one's saying anything. It's clear that that's what's motivating this.
How young does some of this start? Like as far as is that surgery?
For the medical,
is that surgery?
Or hormones.
That's hormones.
And they say puberty blockers are some kind of alternative to hormones, but puberty is blocked using a hormone. The hormone is called gonadotropin releasing hormone analog. Analog means it's similar to the kind your body makes, but different. And by different, they mean it's 20 times as strong. 20 times. At least one of them is the Lupron. I don't know about the other analogs that they're using now, Suprelin, for instance. But these are hormones. They are giving 8-year-olds hormones in order to stunt their sexual development. And it's not reversible any more than you can crash into a tree and then just reverse your car and you're fine. That's not.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard this talked about before, that if the hormones are given, too early before, say a biological boy, goes through puberty, when it comes time to I guess, kind of go through with the sex change, they might not have enough penis to basically forge a vagina out of it.
That's what happened to Jazz Jennings. That's exactly what happened to Jazz Jennings.
Who is that? Who's Jazz?
He is the star of the show I Am Jazz, which is somehow still on TV. It's somehow still on TV, even after this happened. It's been on TV for years since they figured out that they did this to him. He was put on puberty blockers 11, and the puberty blockers, and then he was very shortly after that, he was put on estrogen, immediately had psychiatric complications that were severe, and which he was not taken off the puberty blockers, though. He was not put back on testosterone like he was supposed to be on. They just decided full steam ahead with the experiment. We're going to figure out what happens when you do something like this. And as a result, when it came time to do the vaginoplasty and he's getting these consultations at 16, all the doctors are like, wow, it's so small. Wow, look how tiny. It's like you didn't even grow at all. You didn't even grow at all. Oh, but too bad. It turns out it's probably going to be too hard to reverse it. Like, it was a whole discussion. They had to go to multiple consultations before they finally found somebody willing to actually try. And of course it failed. It immediately failed. And he had to have multiple revisions. And based on how he talks in the show, my sense is that he has given up. I don't think that he got to a point where it works. I think he's just given up. He doesn't want any more surgery, so they're just going to lie.
How old is he? How old is Jazz now?
21. He's 21. He is morbidly obese. I make the argument in my reaction to it, which is I Am Jazz's waking nightmare, that the obesity, the compulsive eating, is directly connected to the puberty blockers. There's a syndrome called Prader-Willi syndrome. This syndrome is caused by a genetic deletion, I think chromosome 15, but it's implicated in the synthesis of gonadotropin-releasing hormone in the body, and that's action somehow, and specifically involved in that's action on the hypothalamus. And so as a result, these kids, they don't have a correctly developed hypothalamus, and the consequence of that is that they will eat until their stomachs explode. And the reason is that in addition to the intellectual deficit that happens, there's reinforcement that they get from eating, like behavioral reinforcement. They eat the food, it tastes good, so they keep eating. Mm-hmm. But they don't have normal sensitization of the hypothalamus for oxytocin, which in English means that they don't feel satisfied from eating. They eat food, and there's no reinforcement to have had eaten already. Like, I don't, you're supposed to eat, and then a little while later you're supposed to be done with eating. You're supposed to feel full, feel satisfied. That it doesn't happen, specifically because of the interaction between gonadotropin releasing hormone and the hypothalamus in Prader-Willi, and so that's the result. Now, obviously, Jazz doesn't have Prader-Willi. Otherwise, the problems that he has would have shown up much sooner in life. He had a normal developing hypothalamus that they then messed with. And to develop correctly, the hypothalamus, much like a plant, needs a pulsing rate of gonadotropin releasing hormone. It's not like, you just fill it up until it's done. It has to be pulsing over a period of years. Mm-hmm. And it's a very complex pulse that changes on the daily, and it changes by season, and it changes time of day. So it's just very, very complex rhythm that they just completely obliterate by sticking an implant in his arm that releases the same amount on a continuous basis year round. And it's because they didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea what they were doing, and they didn't care enough to find out.
It is, so you said the show is still on. Is it like repeats, or they're reruns?
It just finished its 7th season. Supposedly it got picked up for an 8th season, although I haven't seen actual confirmation of that, but 7th season just ended. I haven't even finished my responses to it.
And what happens, like, episode to episode? I haven't watched, like, I'm watching,
hilarious.
I'm watching reality TV now.
It's a church of trans propaganda.
I'm watching on Netflix is a great documentary, a docuseries about Formula One racing that I never had any interest in, and then my brother-in-law was telling us about it, so my wife and I have started watching. We love it. We think it's great. But like with jazz, you know, is like what do they do? You know, episode to episode. I mean, you said right now they're morbidly obese. Like,
yeah, so like they went to see the nutrition counselor, and then they went back to have like conversations with Jazz about his eating, and they just kind of bully him most of the time, and that's a pretty old pattern too. Like there's
who's bullying them? Like
everyone, like literally everyone. It feels like, and there might have been like 2 people on the show that I feel like have not bullied him, and both of them were not like regulars on the show.
Are his parents on the show? Or are they like,
yeah, his parents and his 3 siblings, because their whole the whole family's famous, and their bread and butter is jazz, and jazz continuing with the transition. So it's very much like that's how the Italian castratis, where they would castrate the boys so that they could sing. That was typically how it happened. Was that the families would castrate them in order for the child to have some kind of singing career and lift the family out of poverty.
The castraltos, right? I think that's the
castrati, like castrator.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're blending it with contralto, which is a different singing term.
Oh, okay. I am no singer. I'll tell you. I'm no musician. Now I'm just wondering a parody of The Sopranos, but with the other way. So
yeah, Jazz has a very, very high pitched voice. It's when he sings, his singing voice is higher than mine, and my singing voice is, I'm a soprano. So.
And are the siblings transitioning too, or the siblings, you know?
The siblings are not trans identifying, and so one sibling, they've had a whole plot line where they're trying to get him to date a transgender woman because he's cisgender heterosexual, and he's very proud of that. He's an ally. And so they keep setting him up with like different trans women to like date. And he just like clearly is heterosexual. He's clearly extremely heterosexual, which means that these women are not women, and he knows it, and everyone else knows it. And it's hysterical. So cause he'll try to be like very like politically correct and be like, look, I'm not, trans women are women, but I only like women who have vaginas. It's like, oh, so you're super straight. And like you can see in like the episode after that, like he's back to saying, no, I definitely could. Even if they had a penis, I'd find a way. It
would find a way. Wow.
He'd find a way. He's pray away the gay. So I had a meme that was like turf or ally in the streets, turf in the sheets. After.
Well, you talked about this, like being, you're gay, right? Is that okay? And that's something that I've been, you know, as an outsider looking in, just the idea that lesbians are being shamed or guilted into accepting, you know, what do they call it? Girl dick? Is that what one of the terms are? I mean, I've had the fortunate of having dated women who turned out to be lesbian later on. They were a lot of fun. I don't know if I put them over the edge where they're like, you know what, after this Lou guy, I think I don't need any more men. But yeah, I just can't imagine. It seems like such a straight guy move, you know, to be like trying to, come on, like, what are you, a bigot? You don't want to get with me.
Yeah. But I've seen the same thing with some of these trans identifying females, women who are claiming to be men in some way, who target gay men, and will try to make it out like that they're bigoted in some way for not being interested in them on account of femaleness.
Yeah, all the gay men I know love cock. That's a big part of who they are, is the fact that they love men. Like they love, they love what we have to offer. So yeah, it's just, it seems like things are moving very, very fast from, I remember, not too long ago, it was we learned that there was a clear line of difference between sex and gender. Sex was, female or male, and gender was how you, express it, and, and all that. And then now things, have blended where they're both used sort of interchangeably. And I don't know, I'm confused, I think.
It has moved fast. It's moved very, very fast. And there's a lot of contradictions in what is and is not the dogma, the doctrine. When did these gender identities start? With the discovery of non-binary identities, that's really kind of blown a lid off of the previous claim that we all have a gender identity and it forms by age 3, and it's usually corresponds to your sex, but sometimes not. And so when it doesn't, they can't change a gender identity. Gender identity is fixed, so the only option is to cut out the feelings cancer so that they don't kill themselves. And so any sort of barbarism and deformity and that result is justified because they're literally going to die otherwise, because there's no cure for this. There's no way to fix it. And now we've got the non-binaries running around being like some people are agender. It's like, how? What does that mean? Well, gender is just, it's how you relate to each other, and it's how you want to move in the world, and this and that. And it's like, okay, so following that to the logical conclusion, I'm a speech therapist. I work with people who don't have language. They're seriously impaired. They can't function very well. Are we saying that agender people are socially impaired? Is that what makes them agender? So it doesn't. The theory doesn't hold out. What is gender? If you want to say that it's like this mushy label for like sexualized interactions, and whether you want to be the top or the bottom, or you're going to be the pursuer, the pursued, or this or that, the stuff that drag sends up. That's the whole idea behind drag, is that it's playing around with the fact that there is some kind of like a sexual dynamic that happens that, in gay culture, obviously we can't just assume this is females and this is males, and it's a bit misogynistic anyway to say that females always have to be passive and this and that. So, but it's that kind of there's something to that. But then if you were going to say that some people don't have any level of that, like the logical conclusion is that they would be very impaired, that they would have a disability. But they're not saying that. They want that's just their retort for when I say I don't have a gender identity. They say, oh, you're agender. Ah, checkmate. Like, well, no, I'm still interacting with you. Are you saying that there's a way to interact in a way that's not gendered? Shouldn't we all be aspiring to that? Like, I don't understand. Is there a cheat sheet about which actions are gendered and which ones are not?
Oh man. And then we get into something that you talked about before, this idea about being born into the wrong body, and how in a way it's sort of a secular version of the soul, I guess would be.
It's a version of like you can't be born into a body unless you're in a body, and if you are in a body, what are you? Well, you're something that exists apart from and before the body, that is then placed into the body at some point, presumably prior to your birth. I guess 6 weeks. Is that what Texas said? So 6 weeks, your gender identity is placed into the fetus, and then if all goes according to plan, you're born. So it doesn't make sense though. So if you are not a religious person, or if you value secularism, you have to see that at the very least, the state, I believe, should take the official position that the state is regulating physical bodies. I don't think the state should be regulating what exists apart and before the body. I don't think that's the purview of the state. That's clearly church. And I don't think people should be forced to go to church, much less when they're at work. I don't think people should have to pray to these gender deities at work. And that's what they are. They're deities. They're metaphysical entities that act in the physical world through unseen means. So that we all have to pray to them. I have to acknowledge their presence with the use of these pronouns, or else their wrath is going to harm an individual person in some way, who I can see.
Right.
And if I pray to it, the entity will bless the person with gender euphoria. That's the other discovery. It's not just that we're avoiding dysphoria. No, now we have an affirmative duty to trigger their euphoria.
Gender euphoria.
Yeah.
In a way, I feel like I'm hoping that everyone who listened to this had some kind of euphoric response. Doubtful, though. We got into some really heavy stuff, man. Normally I'm in bed right now, dreaming about things that have nothing to do with this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight after going through this. Now, it's not even a conversation. I went through this right now. You sort of imposed, you confronted me with this stuff, but wow. So maybe just like, to close things out, what are you hopeful for? Or are you hopeful of, I don't know, things changing, or in what way can they change? And, what would you like to see, especially with the, the work that you're doing and the time that you're taking to highlight, so many of these cases?
I do have hope. I do have optimism. And I think that, even compared to when I started doing this, which wasn't that long ago, it was only in like March of 2021 that I started speaking out publicly about these topics on TikTok. I feel like the landscape has already changed so much in terms of people willing to come out and say, this is nuts. This is not cool what we're doing. And maybe that's just because of the circles I now run in. But it feels like I get less and less pushback as time goes on. And I see more and more accounts popping up of people who are fed up, call it peaking. And I feel like 3 to 5 years is where the landscape will be completely different, and we'll hit a point where enough people have seen this, because they're really, it is such a fad in schools right now. I have parents reaching out to me being like, there was no trans people at the school last year, and now literally all of my daughter's friends are trans, identifying like all of them. And there's no, I think some of the numbers I've seen are like 4,000, 5,000% increase in referrals. And that's because of social media. It's because of social contagion. It's because they're able to find out about it. And that seems like their answer. But the kids grow up fast. And if you start someone on puberty blockers at 13, the idea that they're gonna make it to 18 with no serious problems is unlikely, and they all know each other. So the stories, I feel like, and I'm doing what I can to speed that along. People are going to find out, and it's going to be similar to lobotomy, but I'm hoping faster than it took us to figure out that lobotomy was bad. Lobotomy was a huge fad, and people didn't understand what it did to people. And I think we're in a similar situation where people really have this idea that doctors know what they're doing. Doctor knows best. They're all these people are saying, "Oh yeah, it's fine and no regrets." But they say that because there's consequences if they have regrets. Then they're transphobes, and by the time you get that far down the line, you have this siege mentality that only other trans people care about you, and it can be quite a revelation to realize that there's actually a whole movement out there of people that are composed of detransitioners, people who are never trans, who are just parents, feminists, this coalition of the fed up who are coming together to provide a safe place to land for when people want to leave, when people are done, when they want to say, you know what, this was a bad choice. Now I'm farting through my vagina and I didn't want that. And it's also made of colon. And so every time I eat, I have to change my pants. And it's like, how many, like, as you said, you were on a journey in this conversation. I make fun of people when they use that word, but yeah, I'm using it here. People just kind of need to be walked through why it's so bad. I have a lot of faith in people's ability to recognize badness.
And I think it's really it's important to confront the cases that go wrong and really wrong, because these are the lives of people who obviously are seeking help in some way and are hurting, and the idea that they like you described, farting through your vagina that's made out of your colon, like, fuck,
nightmare.
That's a nightmare. It really is. So if people want to find more nightmares, I know that you're happy to oblige. They can
check 550 videos or something, and it's all that
500. It's like just one more ring of of Dante's Inferno. So Exulansic.
Gender health. Okay. Yeah, Exulansic.
Exulansic.com. EXULANCIC. SIC. Oh, sorry.
EXULANSIC.
SIC.com. That's right. Don't listen to me, guys. Listen to her. And your videos are available on Odyssey, on TikTok, and you know, you're doing work. You're doing real work as well, and in addition to this, with speech pathology, is it?
Yeah. So I mostly early intervention these days, but otherwise a wide range of people.
Awesome.
So got the day job, and I've got this that keeps me entertained at night.
There you go. And thank you for entertaining me tonight. And I hope everybody listening is entertained as well through the nightmare. Thank you so much for listening. And again, please order my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Just follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And please subscribe to my podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Why not? Sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And if you want other ways to support my work, you can join thelouperez.locals.com. And of course, be sure to support my sponsors, PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Use promo code Lou for 25% off purchases over $75, and Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com. Use promo code Lou for free shipping. Thank you.